without a bite of intimacy. Something in your life is going to go completely morbid. Nothing can ever stand a chance against the morbid doing that your life has to offer. The prosciutto addicts of Italy, the ants in the kitchen, and the Byzantine Empire's blue failure. All of that stupidity. All of those people who can't stand a chance against the demigod Maui. All of those people who just have a faith to kill the bad things. They don't think. First impressions are awfully misunderstood. Because, for example, a first impression of me would be that you would not want to be with me because I was ordering you around all the time. But then, as you went along, you'd realize this is actually working well. Now, no one can kill anyone. Killing is wrong. Killing is bad. I just want to throw that out there. Killing is bad. And not letting someone go along with you and show you their real identity is wrong. Give them a chance. I had two friends yesterday. They ate the platoon from his golf net. The next thing you know, they're going to be completely grossed out by shepherd's pie and moussaka. They hate the potato topping. Look to the positives. If you don't like it, come back to it. That's the only way you can get by the fall fixed cuttings of the deep quarry. You get the stone slate in the tube, and how they do it is they just run it down the mines, and then down to the chute where engines and men get coal over their faces without having to clean up after workshop loaning. It's best to let the deep ends worry about that. It's best to have them give you a shampoo or do a massage. Something out of saving yourself. Something out of figuring out. Something out of a savior of the deep. Something we wish to pursue as a big, honest mistake. The first impression of the changing road winding, you don't see it, but they do, is wrong. It's actually the pilot sunset, not the doomed abandoned junkyard. People are so wrong when they go down that alley. They get scared. Then they get lost. The fog just closes them in. But I have to say, if you have true faith in the fog will open a small path that you can go through. The fog is not God. However, God, He makes sure that the fog does the job. He makes sure that the fog acts like a gateway to the outside world. I've just seen two hedge hunters over there, and they argue which is more important, the wood piece or the fish. One argues the fish, the other argues the wood piece. I have to tell you that the wood piece is the same amount of importance as the fish. The fish is a living creature. teacher. But think, if you had to be warm, if you had to live and hunt and survive in the fall, you would definitely need wood to burn a fire. What if you didn't have blankets with you? You would rub the warmth from your hands all over your excess body, and it would keep you toasty warm. I had someone yesterday who gave up a ball in the air. They said, "You throw this up." And when you throw it up, if it hits the ceiling, you know where the top will be. You have a knife and you get rid of the cobwebs. The only way you can save them from the deep cuttings is to get them away. But walk away, just like a bee, walk away from the deep cuttings. I guess my point here is to be brave. The deep cuttings and the doomed cleaner. Keep away, but be brave. I mean, you're not going to run away. Be brave to walk away, but don't face it. You can't stand a chance against either the deep cuttings, because neutralizers face the challenge of facing the stairs on the slates. In the deep cuttings is a process where the powder gets changed into the brick. Then the brick gets shot off into the air and into the pole of dynamite. This pole is protected by sacred Indian troopers, surprisingly. This pole is sacred, they say. Don't mess with it. If you mess with it, you're getting on sacred ground.
The video that you just saw may have been really random, but I'm here to tell you that I prove a lot of points and I have so many different things to say and teach. Although you can't tell it, by watching the video, but there's bundles of knowledge and wisdom, like little jewels and little gems within what I talk about. And I'm going to point that out. I'm going to point them out to you. And maybe, you could find some things, in what I was saying. I know a lot of it you didn't get, but I'm going to get into what I was getting at, and it may have been unconscious, like I may have not been in my mind thinking of these different things and said, okay, I'm going to try to explain this, but in a metaphor sense. And, since if I'm giving a metaphor, I'm giving an example of this. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just trying to mock TED Talk, trying to be up there and, allude to all these different things, all these different lessons. And I was trying to go off topic and being clever with all the things I could come up with and all the things I could say, which were, random. Because again, with TED Talks, everybody up there has a point. And even though I didn't really have a point, except to be brave, which is one of the things I'll talk about here, I make several points. And I wasn't intending it to be profound or anything like that. Maybe I was. And I didn't know that I would be speaking about all this wisdom, all these lessons, all these different things. But looking back on it, I actually did. And this is what I talk about So the first thing I talk about is morbid doings. Morbid deals with what is unpleasant. It relates to what is, or maybe, taboo, like you wouldn't talk about it at the dinner table. It's, it deals with things being dark, very, disturbing, wrong, negative. That's what morbid deals with. So I was talking about, I say, something in your life is going to go completely morbid. Basically saying things are going to happen in life that are going to be, super dark, super negative. And that's what I was really trying to get at here. You get the picture there. So that's the first point that I was trying to prove. And then I list a couple examples which were super random. But they were ultimately leading to another point. And then I say nothing can stand a chance against the morbid doings that your life has to offer. This could also mean maybe you're meant to experience these negative things, this pain, this sadness, all of these negative things. And while you can pray for positivity and pray for things to go well, pray for good health and all those kinds of things like that, then, well, things are going to happen regardless. So it's got to also mean that life brings morbid things, and sometimes not a whole lot can stand a chance against that. So there's certain forces at work, but God works in mysterious ways, as the saying goes. So that's another thing there. And then I list 3, examples. I then go on, but then sort of proceed in the same TED Talk, but then I sort of change the subject. So I list 3 random examples. The prosciutto addicts of Italy, the Byzantine Empire's blue failure, the ants in the kitchen was another one. So all really random examples, all that stupidity, I say. And those things are, random and, stuff that happens in life. And let's not make fun of or negate others' pain and just, laugh at it and say this life is a cosmic joke. And it's just a movie, particularly in the moment when you're feeling those feelings of, negativity, pain, challenge. Then no, it's not a joke and not a movie. It's real. So when I listed these 3 examples, I think what I was getting at was the prosciutto addicts of Italy. That had to do with me being really interested in cooking, and I was really into Italian cuisine, because I was seeing several Italian cooking shows, including Ciao Italia on Miriam Esposito. You can look her up on YouTube. She does, videos, cooking videos, and recipes from her show, Ciao Italia, are released on her YouTube channel. So you can watch those and other videos also. But so I was into that in the prosciutto addicts of how, if depending upon how prosciutto, the ham prosciutto, is aged. And it may be in addicts, it may be something else. I probably wasn't exactly sure of what I was saying there. But then I also talk about the ants in the kitchen, and I was seeing a show on Netflix that was called Good Luck Charlie, basically about this child who was raised in a family with a lot of, sons and daughters, and their parents had a lot of children. That sort of tells the story of the Duncan family. And Teddy in the show, who makes video diaries for Charlie to watch when she's older, to look back and remember what happened when she was younger, with her what's going on in her family. So she's creating memories for her. Teddy's creating memories in one episode. In a later episode, she had to work for just kind of a fill-in for her dad, who was an exterminator. So she was filling in, and then she got somebody called her because his his business was Bob's Bugs Be Gone, and so she answered the phone, and then she said, ants in the kitchen. She grossed out about it, and then the person probably asked, "Do you work here?" And she said, "No, I don't work here." So that's how that came about, because, an exterminator's job, deals with, cleaning out, getting rid of pests and things like that. And then the Byzantine, I think I mispronounced that in the video. I said Byzantine Empire's blue failure. I was watching a documentary about the Byzantine Empire, and the lighting looked blue. It sort of had a blue lighting to the documentary. So, moving on. So I spoke about stupidity, and then you can't stand a chance. I was sort of saying there are certain things, certain forces that are way more powerful than you, that are out of your control. While you are powerful, you're also powerless, and there's a limit to that. There's a limit to your power, so you can't stand a chance. I sort of bring that up a couple of different times against other, certain things. Of some fights you can't win, or some things you can't be stronger than in life, where you can't compete with certain things of that, where you're, probably, humbled, or, something else. So certain aspects of life are bigger and beyond your control. Or, you can't win a fight against this or that. And then, I talk about the deep cuttings, and I had a little, story with this. Deep cuttings are basically the dangerous aspects of life, the dark and dangerous aspects of life. So that's what I was talking about. And specifically with that, I was referring to, in Thomas and Friends, there was this one episode where one of the engines was getting under a coal hopper, and then the coal went into a place where it wasn't supposed to go, and then he had to go to the steamworks, which is where the engines go if there's a problem, and then they get fixed. Sort of like, going to the doctor, if you have a physical problem. And, the engines in Thomas and Friends were personified, and it was meant to be, a metaphor for these engines being people, or children, because it was a, children's show, but it's, really meant for all ages. But sort of to show how these engines learn and grow throughout, Thomas and Friends, with one lesson in every movie and in every, Thomas and Friends video. There's usually, a lesson and a theme or a moral there. So the deep cuttings, maybe, the deep quarry. And I was specifically talking about knives, like, really sharp knife. I remember seeing this one episode of a sitcom, I shouldn't say that, a comedy, a British comedy on PBS called Keeping Up Appearances. And in one episode, one of the characters got his head stuck in the wall, and then there was something about a knife to cut him free or whatever. So I was probably thinking of that when I was doing this, making that video. So deep cuttings, maybe just the sharp things with sharp edges, or dangerous things, especially in the quarry, what's inside of the chute, and all those parts of it. And then just having basic morals. I make it really clear. I mean, if this things that I say and that I talk about that you don't get, but I make it clear, people who kill what they dislike or hate, or, the bad things, they don't think, because killing is probably the worst, or, one of the worst sins you can commit. So killing is wrong, killing is bad. Obviously, that's a very huge understatement, and it's super obvious. So, I'm not going to talk more about that. Then I talk about first impressions that sort of follows this. So first impressions are awfully misunderstood, where you can have this sort of view or this perception of this relationship with somebody based off of first impressions. But they're misunderstood, and you may misjudge them, and you may view them differently at another time, and you may feel differently about them, about your relationship with them, because you're only getting to know somebody at a certain level, to a certain extent. When you first meet them, it takes time for you to really get to know that. First impressions don't, make a conclusion about somebody. They are this way when you're, first meeting them, and it's the be all to end all, and that's all of who they are, because it's not. So I say, give people a chance to show you who they are, to show you what they're all about, getting to know them before just assuming something about them, or eliminating them or cutting them out from your life. And then just to say, eliminating them from your life. And then what propels you to dislike something is another thing I bring up here. What makes you dislike something? What about shepherd's pie? That was my example. And when you dislike something, it may be that association to it that you have. When you dislike something, you can form a new association about it. You can come back to it and have a different experience with it. So don't just get one. Don't just, limit yourself. Maybe, that was one experience, but then I'm going to have another, that's a better experience with that particular thing. So that's the point that I was expressing when I was talking about, if you don't like the moussaka, then I say come back to it. So that was my point. Then letting others walk on the side of the street for you is another thing I talk about here. when I talk about that it's best to let other people, give you a massage. And so letting others do their part to help you, let others do their job to be in service to you, to give you something that you like and that you would appreciate. You can give yourself a massage, but I think the real experience is to go and have a massage. So that would require somebody else to give you that massage. That would require, it takes two to tango, as the saying goes. I was also getting across surrendering to the universe, spiritual narcolepsy, and that idea. Letting others in to help you and not, that you don't have to do it all yourself. And if you end up doing all yourself, it's important to, allow spirit or the divine or, others to guide you, but, you're co-creating your own reality. Another theme that I speak about here in this video, when I say you don't see it, but they do, that notion. It's basically saying that, and I was, disapproving of that here. And I was, sort of hinting at trusting your own intuition, your own inner knowing. It's, right for you. And not looking for others for validation, not being overly dependent on others to be, hold your hand all the time and, guide you all the time. And determine what you need and what's right for you. The whole way of, disempowering you with certain conditioning. You don't see it, but they do. No. It's about you seeing what they are seeing. So, it's the opposite of you don't see it, but they do. That I was probably getting at there. And then I was saying, I was giving an example of a pilot's sunset evening, not the doomed abandoned junkyard. People are so wrong when they go down that alley. They get scared, or something. So there was this math classroom in the math textbook that had a front cover of a plane that was, I think it was yellow or red, something or other. There's also the Ring of Infinity on there. So it kind of looked like a beautiful evening and a beautiful sky and sunset. And the cover of it was also the sunset. And it symbolized just sort of being willing to go beyond and, achieve a goal that you want to achieve. That's the sort of meaning that I got from the cover of that textbook. But I was saying the pilot's sunset evening, not the doomed abandoned junkyard, which is to say not, something, so scary, not something so dark, where you thought it was the doomed abandoned junkyard, but it was actually the pilot's sunset evening, where you thought, that it was going to be so scary and so you were going to feel so alone, etc. It's actually quite positive. It's actually not as scary as you thought it was. Actually quite peaceful. You feel more confident. You feel more brave. You feel more, you feel happier. So that's the point that I was saying. And realizing, you were wrong and seeing something for what it really is another point. Seeing something for what it is. people are so wrong when they go down that alley, assuming that it's a doom abandoned junkyard and it's secure and all those kind of things. But the reality is it is something else. It is not like that. And maybe it is only seeing the negative side of something instead of also acknowledging the polarity of the positive aspects of that thing. So it's both and, real seeing the positives and negatives, but also seeing, that thing for what it really is and not what people say it is. And they warn people, oh, don't do this, don't do that, because this is going to happen. You're going to end up feeling this way. But actually do it for yourself and experience it, and then have this kind of, like, you may have these realizations and these thoughts and beliefs about something, but when you actually experience it, when you actually go down that alley, then you reach a different conclusion. You feel differently. You have a different experience. And it turns out to be something different. And could be for better or for worse, but it may be different. And that's the point that I was making there. Trusting the universe to guide you is yet another point that I make there. And there is something bigger than us at play here, where you're not the only ones, and where there's spirit, and there's the cosmos, and all those kind of things. And then I was giving the example of God, and then him creating the fog, that there are forces that create things and make things occur in life, where we can really find spiritual meaning in our lives. And then I said the fog does the job being created by God. And that may not be your religion, and I'm just using that not to say I just use that as an example. Whatever you want to call it, goddess or God, or whatever, doesn't matter, as long as you're in conscious contact and in a divine relationship with that higher power. And then connecting to higher realms, and then the veil between the worlds, where we can connect to the spirit realms and connect to spirit. The fog acts as a gateway to the outside world. And I was saying you could perhaps go through this fog and then have a spiritual experience, or and reach a divine place and see the divinity, and see the spirit in what is on the other side, or what is outside your your head and your logical mind, in your own world, in your own perception, in your own experience. What is what lies outside, what lies beyond your comfort zone, and what is familiar to you. What you've already know. And it's also about facing the unknown, facing what is outside, facing what is unknown. So going through the fog, you're going into the unknown. When you connect to spirit, you can more easily step into the unknown and face it. Step into the uncertain, step into, walking through the fog and all those kind of things. Then I talk about the notion of both and, not either or. When I talk about the fish and the wood, I actually call it a wood piece, but I talk about that, two hitch hunters that I made up. When I said in the video, I had these friends yesterday. I've seen two hitch hunters. I was making that up. So when I say I've seen these people, I've done this, I've done that, I was making that up. I was making all of that up. Point being here that there were two hitchhikers, which, they're really called. Don't know why I said hitch hunters. I should have said hitchhikers. They were arguing, which is more important, the fish or the wood piece. Well, if you're trying to survive and you're at a place where you can find, fish and water, then both of them are equally important because of just the practical, necessity. You need something to eat, but then you also need to be warm if you're surviving in the fall or cold, environment, or a cold climate, for instance. And then I talk about, survival tactics. So rubbing your body, rubbing your excess body, rubbing your, just your body on the outside. Doing this with your hands to keep them warm, or rubbing your legs or something like that, or doing certain things that you can do to keep yourself warm with what you have when it comes to, taking care of your body and rubbing your body to keep yourself warm. I guess that was the point that I was trying to make. Then I went on to talk about the ball. So here I said, hitting your limits of how far you can go. When I had the metaphor of a ball hitting the ceiling, when I throw it up, that's where the top will be. That's basically, the ceiling is the limit. They say the sky is the limit. Well, that's meant to mean something else, but then the sky is the limit. We're talking about a limit here. So it's to prove that, you can only go so far, but there's, a limit. The ball can go so far, but then there's a ceiling, and that's a limitation. Then it causes the ball to, come down from the ceiling, or, hit the ground, or something else. So, it's about knowing your limitations, knowing how far you can go, how far you can reach, how much you can do. And walking away without risk. So again, I was referring to the deep cuttings, and then, the bee. Like, with bees, it's best to just sort of walk away and be calm, but not, to run away and go, get crazy and flail your arms around. To walk away without risk, to, take the necessary, steps, or, the wise and smart steps to walk away from a situation, but not to, confront it and then end up, regretting your decision to be in that situation and putting yourself in harm's way and putting yourself at risk and in danger. So walk away, don't, run away in fear of being willing to calmly walk away from a situation, knowing your boundaries, without risking it, with knowing where the limit is, of knowing if something's, also not for you. Keeping away from dark forces. I gave a couple examples here with talking about deep cuttings and the doom cleaner, like a, vacuum cleaner that's like scary and it's a monster and it's haunted. For example, I don't know. So keeping away from dark forces is another point. Keeping your distance from things that could, consume or eat or hurt you, and knowing where that limit is. And then, being brave as well, both and, the kind of same side of that coin. Where you're, being brave to walk away, but you're not exactly facing it when you can't face something. Otherwise, it's just not worth it. You're going to get hurt. Or you're going to be worse off because of going in, head on and facing it. And while it is, good to, face your fears and to be greater than your fear and not, run away from your problems. I don't think I was saying, maybe I was saying run away from problems. I wasn't conscious of these lessons and, this discussion that I'm giving to you right now. But maybe walking away and being brave to walk away when something's not right for you. Plucking up the courage to walk away when, a situation is not right or best for you, where you're going to be, worse off, you're going to get hurt, or, whatever, and being brave to walk away from a situation that's out of your control and dangerous. It could also be dangerous and too much, too overwhelming, etc. Then, being brave. So another point that I make here is looking at the people who do the dirty work. Who do those jobs, firefighters, firemen, people who, clean the sewers and, all those kind of things, acknowledging those people who do the dirty work. So I also talk about that. Just sort of hint at that. And then protection and boundaries, where certain things have a boundary to them. Again, certain things have a limit to them. And knowing when to protect yourself and when to draw those boundaries. And I gave, talking about a pole, and then sacred Indian troopers, and, the fact that you're not allowed to step onto that territory and go beyond a certain line because the grounds are sacred. There's sort of a protection of privacy there, where it's not wise to go on that territory because it's somebody else's ground, not yours, or it's not right. It's there's a boundary there, and I'm going to draw the boundary, and it will not be crossed. So that's, again, linking to boundaries and limits there at the end of the video. So I hope that you like this, and now I've explained what all these things mean that I was talking about, and I hope that you enjoyed this and got something out of it, got value from it. And I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.